All right, good afternoon. The Secretary General, as we've been telling you, is in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, to attend the Fifth African Union European Union Summit. This morning, he met with the presidents of Cote d'Ivoire, Angola, and Rwanda, and we put out readouts of most of those meetings. He then attended a trilateral meeting with the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, the president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, the EU High Representative and Vice President of the European Council, Federica Mogherini. They agreed to put in place a joint EU-AU-UN task force to save and protect lives of migrants and refugees along the routes, and in particular inside Libya, accelerating the assisted voluntary returns to countries of origin and the resettlement of those in need of international protection. The Secretary General then addressed the opening ceremony of the summit. He said that young people are the driving force of our societies and that we need to listen to them and put them at the center of our development plans. While responding to their aspirations is essential for development, he added, it is also key to preserve peace and security. Noting that the Common Africa-EU strategy was adopted 10 years ago, the Secretary General said it's time to strengthen the ties between the two continents. Recent atrocious images of migrants being sold in Libya are a reminder of the urgency to act, he added. The Secretary General said also that there was a need to change the relationship with Africa and establish a new cooperation platform that recognizes the huge potential of the continent. The Secretary General, will leave Abidjan tonight and will be in the office tomorrow afternoon. And you will have seen that in a statement we issued last night, the Secretary General strongly condemned the launch of yet another ballistic missile launched by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This is a clear violation of Security Council resolutions and shows complete disregard for the united views of the international community, he said in the statement. The Secretary General urges the DPRK to desist from taking any further destabilizing steps. The Secretary General reaffirms his commitment to working with all parties to reduce tensions. And this afternoon, the Security Council also scheduled a meeting on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and that is scheduled to take place just after 3 p.m. consultations on Lebanon. And back here, rather on Syria, as you know, the Geneva talks are continuing with Special Envoy Stephane de Mistura having a series of meetings this morning, including with a delegation of the government of Syria. Back here, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, briefed the Council on Syria this morning and said that after 7 years of conflict, some 13.1 million people need humanitarian aid and protection, with 5.6 million people in acute need. In terms of displacement, more than 6,500 people have been displaced on average every day for the first 9 months of this year, while 2,500 people have been returning daily. Mr. Lowcock expressed worry about the food situation in eastern Ghouta, where only 100,000 out of an estimated 400,000 people have received food assistance this year. The available evidence suggests that severe acute malnutrition among children in that area has increased fivefold in the past 10 months. And he added that the needs remain high. It's important to preserve all means of humanitarian access, including cross-border and cross-line operations. He told the Council that he plans to visit Syria in early January to assess the situation and discuss how we can improve assistance to all those in need. And as we told you earlier, this week, UN humanitarian flights to Yemen resumed on the 25th of November. 2 commercial vessels carrying food have arrived in Hodeidah, carrying a total of 35,020 metric tons of wheat and flour. 3 vessels carrying nearly 65,000 metric tons of food have been cleared by the UN verification inspection mechanism and are awaiting permission from the Saudi-led coalition to enter Hodeidah port. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that while some food has started to reach Yemen, it is not sufficient to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. In Yemen itself, the cost of diesel has doubled, while the price of petrol has risen more than 70% and cooking gas by 18%. It's critical that fuel reaches all Yemeni ports immediately. Fuel is essential to operate generators for hospitals and water pumps, as well as to deliver drinking water and food. In South Sudan, the Special Representative of the Secretary General in that country, David Shear, condemned the killings of around 45 people in an attack against a Dinka village yesterday in Jonglei region, Some 60 women and children were abducted. The Merle and Dinka communities in Jonglei have been engaged in long-standing interethnic violence, which has operated outside of the wider political conflict, which has impacted the country since 2013. David Sher also urged the leaders of both communities to put an end of the cycle of revenge killings and work to bring the perpetrators of all attacks to account. The dead include humanitarian workers. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme has successfully sent a first convoy to deliver food assistance from Sudan to the northwestern South Sudanese city of Awel in Bahr el Ghazal region. This is the third overland route to open between the two countries since 2014, and WFP plans to send enough food down this new route in 2018 to feed 1.7 million people for 10 months. And the World Food Programme has also assisted a total of 4.6 million people in South Sudan so far this year, with 208,000 metric tons of food and almost $25 million in cash. And in Libya, the UN Refugee Agency today welcomed the decision by the government authorities to set up a transit and departure facility in Tripoli for people in need of international protection. This initiative, which is supported by the Italian government, will facilitate the transfer of thousands of vulnerable refugees to third countries. And today is the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And in a message to mark the occasion, the Secretary General says he remains convinced that the two-state solution recognized by that resolution is the only premise for a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The resolution of this conflict would also create momentum for greater stability throughout the region. He says that the recent positive developments on intra-Palestinian unity should be harnessed by all to move the process in the right direction. And as you know, the Deputy Secretary General represented the Secretary General at the events that took place earlier today here at headquarters. And I wanted to flag that the World Health Organization issued their World Malaria Report 2017 today. They warned that after unprecedented global success in malaria control, progress is now stalled. There's an estimated 5 million more malaria cases in 2016 than 2015, and malaria deaths stood at around 445,000, similar to the previous year. This means that the world is not on track to reach the global malaria target aimed at a 40% reduction in cases and mortality by 2020. A major problem is insufficient funding both at the domestic and international levels. And I also want to flag a new database launched today by the Food and Agriculture Organization to help countries better monitor, survey, and effectively manage their animal genetic resources, allowing for early warning of the threat of extinction. The Domestic Animal Diversity Information System, DAD-IS, is the most complete source of global information on animal genetic diversity to date. It is the result of 3 decades of collecting national data from 182 countries. Currently, it contains data on almost 9,000 breeds of livestock and poultry, including the breed characteristics, information, distribution, demographics, and more than 4,000 images. Interesting database. Halas. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stephane. As you indicated, the Secretary General met with the chair of the African Union. He also signed an agreement, framework and agreement in peace and security area. What are the main elements of that agreement?
I'm trying to get a bit more detail as we speak. I'll share them with you. Yes, Abdelhamid.
I have 3 questions, and they all start with why.
That's a good way to start a question.
Yeah. Why there was no statement on the occasion of passing Resolution 181, which was called the Partition Plan, which ended in disseminating or destroying the Palestinian people, or at least partially. That's one. And second, why there was no announcement yesterday about the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And third, why there is no announcement about the exhibit, which will start at 6 p.m. with the opening of the, Amina Muhammad will open it, and it has the photos of 100 Palestinian achievers in the field of art, music, writing, cinema, etc., etc. Thank you.
On your first question, I would refer you to the statement that was delivered by the chef du cabinet on behalf of the Secretary General at the event organized by the Permanent Mission of Israel yesterday to mark the passing of Resolution 181. On your second question, we flagged the event today. There are a lot of events that go on here every day at the UN. We don't flag every event. As for the exhibit, I hadn't received any particular information on the exhibit, but obviously the information has been disseminated in other ways. Mr. Lee.
I wanted to ask you about the African Union EU, this joint task force. Can you say, like, is the UN going to send staff to it? Where is it going to be based? Is it? I mean, what's going to be the UN's participation in it?
As to the same question that your colleague raised, we're trying to get a bit more. I just spoke to my colleague on the ground. Wasn't able to get a hold of her to get a bit more details on what was agreed to.
And you'd mentioned the 3 meetings he had so far, you know, and you said that most of them had been read out. Obviously, 2 of the 3 were, and the Rwanda one wasn't. How is it? I guess I want to understand. Is there going to be a Rwanda
there may be something
readout?
in the pipeline. As again, it's these conferences are an event in motion. So if we have something else,
And I'd asked you yesterday whether he'll be meeting with Cameroon President Paul Biya.
I'm not aware of any scheduled meeting with Mr. Biya.
So the 3 meetings that he had, were these at the request of the presidents or at his request?
Some of them are at their request, some of them are the request. It's when 2 people want to meet, they meet. Ms. Abdelhamid, let's go
Back to Resolution 181. In the view of the Secretary General, this resolution, does it really worth issuing a special statement on this resolution? I read the statement read by the Chef du Cabinet at the Israeli mission event, which has completely different angle, totally. He was even praising the relations between the UN and Israel, promising for more closer relations. Although, as you know, and everyone knows that Israel in violation.
Abdelhamid, with due respect, let's go to the why.
Yeah, the question, why there was no statement on this resolution, which is a historic resolution.
I think, as I said, the Secretary General referred to Resolution 181 in the statement yesterday. We're going to leave history to the historians. I think the focus of the Secretary General is very much forward-looking on the Middle East peace process and to see how best he can help the parties reach an agreement. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stephane. Reports indicate that following the launching of the missile by the North Koreans, President Trump has asked China to put more pressure on the government there to review its policies. To your knowledge, has the President, U.S. President, also asked the Secretary General to do likewise?
Well, the Secretary General is not the President of a country. It's not for him to...
Doesn't matter whether he's President.
No, it's not for the Secretary General to... It's a different relationship. With the Secretary General's position, I think was clearly expressed in the statement, and his position remains that it is incumbent on countries to follow and adhere to the Security Council resolution already passed on the DPRK. Fethi.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to the unfolding and ongoing crisis with North Korea and their violations of Security Council resolutions, I know the Security Council is going to meet today to discuss the matter. But is the Secretary General at any point considering using his good offices to try to break the impasse in this situation?
I think the Secretary General has often spoken to that, and first of all, for good offices to be useful, there needs to be agreement by all parties involved. And second, the Secretary General and his staff continue to have contacts with various parties.
Follow-up. At any point, is the Secretary General considering maybe a solution outside of the box to try to hold a special summit at the UN, inviting the leader of North Korea and South Korea and Japan and the US to hold a summit meeting at the UN?
As I said, I think we are interested in being productive and there are, as I said, there are Secretary General's staff continue to have contacts with all the parties. you know, some of these things that you refer to can be big and splashy, but things need to be, contacts continue to be had. I will leave it at that. Yes.
Follow up.
No, hold on. Let's go to your neighbor before we go to round 3. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, follow up on DPRK. Does the Secretary General have any specific expectations from today's meeting other than condemnation? And second, did he have any contacts with the DPRK officials or with the U.S. administration, including Ambassador Haley?
Not in the last 24 hours, and obviously we'll see what comes out of the council meeting. Mr. Lee, you've been patient.
Sure, actually, I have something else, but I've got a DPRK follow-up. Admittedly, the Secretary General is not the president of a country, but he does have some discretionary decisions that his administration has made. And I wanted to, for example, the taking of the junior professional officer. Is this viewed as a decision from that? It's reported that basically it's a North Korea government selected person. Was this a discretionary decision on his part, and also the work on the cyanide patent by WIPO? These are, I guess, what I'm wondering is, given this new launching and given his expression of deep concern.
The WIPO issue is one that is a question you should address to WIPO. The Junior Professionals Program is open to all 193 member states.
Right.
Okay.
So there's
all 193 member states have access to the Junior Professional Program.
And the department, whether it's political affairs or something
obviously, they you know, I think that person, from what I understand, is in the electoral affairs division.
Okay, can I?
You may.
All right,
we're
Thanks
in
a
a
lot.
good mood.
I'm going to get to China Energy Fund Committee, but I want to ask you first about this. There appears to be new sexual exploitation and abuse allegations in UNIMID in Darfur.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to know, it says in it, it seems contradictory. It says that UNIMID is investigating, but it also says that they're already collaborating to make sure that the victim receives psychosocial care. So does that mean that the UN acknowledges that there is a victim? There's just a question of who did it, or how? What,
I mean,
how
I think it's important that if there is a victim who's, and I don't know the details of the case, but I'll speak in principle. It's clear that if there is a victim that has clearly gone through some trauma, that this person be taken care of. That's the victim-centered approach. The mission was very proactive. They put out a press release yesterday, and our colleagues in the upstairs are in the process of updating the relevant website with the new information.
Do you see or have any response to an open letter by Code Blue after the last postings on the website that I asked you about? They said that the responses were insufficient, that the nationality should have been named, and a variety of things should have been done. I'm just wondering, is there a dialogue between them?
I wouldn't. I mean, you know, we enter into dialogue with NGOs, civil society organizations all the time. There are no preference has been given to Code Blue. A lot of organizations, human rights organizations, are involved in following the topic of sexual exploitation and abuse. We value the discussion with those organizations. As you may recall, I think on the sidelines of the General Assembly, if I'm not mistaken, there was a meeting involving all those civil society organizations, including Code Blue. Whether or not they're satisfied or not satisfied with our answer, that's their judgment. The reporting that is done annually to the General Assembly, according to the criteria the General Assembly has requested for civilian staff, does not include nationality, because the General Assembly has not requested that. Let's move on. Abdelhamid, and then I'll come back to China emergent. Abdelhamid.
Yesterday, my colleague Iftikhar Ali asked you about the visit of the Pope Francis to Myanmar. And I want to repeat the same, if there is any intention that the SG has to visit Myanmar. Did it occur to him? Is he planning?
Of course the visit occurred to him. There was some consideration.
Why is he denied?
What? No, there was no issue of being denied. The visit to the region has been considered and continues to be under consideration. And when we feel the moment is right for the Secretary General to go, and the timing is right, the logistics is right, he will go. Everyone has a different role to play, whether it's the Pope, whether it's the Secretary General, whether it's the Secretary General's humanitarian chiefs who've all gone repeatedly to Bangladesh. Everyone has their role to play, but the Secretary General is very much well aware of the situation. Evelyn Leopold.
Yes, thank you, Steph. Syria, listening to the speech this morning from the USG, would you say that the Damascus government is using food as a weapon of war, considering all the difficulties they have getting humanitarian supplies?
I would leave that conclusion. I would leave the conclusion to you about how the parties have manipulated humanitarian aid, have put up roadblocks, whether it's physical or bureaucratic. We have had extreme difficulties in delivering humanitarian aid in all parts of the country.
And what parties are you talking about? The government and others?
I think it's been all parties have made it complicated for us. Mr. Lee, I see you waiting, and then Mr. Abadi.
Okay, great. I wanted to, I think it was Monday that I'd asked you about the grant that went ahead the day after the indictment was made public by and you'd said, I'm looking at the transcript because you insisted, you said you should look at the meeting and see who the organizers were, who were the organizers. So I've really tried. I've tried to follow your advice. But as best as I can make out,
it's a dangerous proposition.
The panel behind there said UN DESA Energy Prize. It seems to be a UN, I don't know what I'm missing. So if it was a UN event and it went forward, it's also reported that Patrick Ho, who's still in jail, was indicted, was one of 5 steering committee members to choose who got the money. I guess I'm wondering, since I see that 3 officials, doesn't seem like a coincidence, maybe you'll say that it was, canceled the photo op, canceled the appearance, canceled the speech. Who made the decision to go forward, and is it one that you can speak about? Like, on what was there? Is there some legal? Is there some reason that you wouldn't say who the organizers were? That the 3 top officials of the UN all canceled their appearance, but the money still went forward. What it seems quite.
I really have no more words to.
But who is the organizer? I mean, I think it's a fair. You sort of sent me on a goose chase.
You've discovered it.
So it is UN DESA.
That's my understanding.
So they decided, what was the communication between the 38th floor and Mr. Liu?
I'm not aware of the internal communications, and I wouldn't speak to it anyway.
But what would you say, given that the person that actually, is it the case that one of the 5 decision makers of how to use the $1 million is a person that had been already indicted?
I don't know if that person is in fact on the steering committee.
Can you find out?
We can check.
Okay.
Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stephane. Regarding the North Korean issue, still, does the Secretary General consider it appropriate and pertinent to launch a mediation effort under Article 99, the good offices of the Secretary General? And you indicated that he is in contact with the parties. At what level is that contact taking place?
I'm not going to go into details. I think when it's an extremely difficult and volatile situation. And I think any involvement or effort into mediation needs to be well prepared and focused on substance rather than theatrics. Thank you.